Good evening, everybody. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Somerville Planning Board at 6:05 p.m. on the 7th of November 2024. I'm Mike Capuano. I'm the chairman of the Planning Board. With me tonight is our Vice Chair, Amelia Aboff, our clerk, Jahan Habib, our members, Michael McNeely, Luke Schuster, and we have a brand new member who is joining us this evening, Lynn Richards. So I wanted to welcome Lynn to her first meeting, which I anticipate will be well run and exciting. So, pursuant to the Chapter 2 of the Act of 2023, this meeting of the Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation. A video recording of these proceedings will be available on the city's website or by emailing planning@somervillema.gov. This meeting is being recorded. So we have a number of items on our agenda tonight. One is a approval for minutes. One is a request for a continuance. We have two public hearings that I'm going to consolidate into one for the purpose of efficiency. We have a second public hearing. We have recommendations on 3 of the zoning amendments that we took up in a joint hearing with the Land Use Committee several weeks ago. And to the extent that we have some additional time, I'd like to bring up the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee. We have a potential amendment to the rules of our policies and procedures. And I don't think we're going to get to the review of standard conditions tonight. But what I'd like to do to start off the meeting is to go through the approval of the minutes. We have draft meeting minutes for October 3rd, 2024 and October 17th. Has everybody had the opportunity to review the draft meeting minutes for October 3rd? Does anybody have any proposed amendments, revisions, actions, anything you'd like to change? Okay. Seeing none, the chair moves to adopt the draft meeting minutes of October 3rd, 2024 as the official minutes of the planning board, seconded by Amelia. Steve, can you please call the roll?
Sure, this is Steve carrying PPZ. I'll just say that Lynn, will just have you abstain from these as you weren't a member at the time of these meetings.
That doesn't matter. So long as the meeting minutes accurately reflect what she anticipates the minutes would have been. We've gotten the okay from the solicitor that that members can vote, especially because we had a period of time when there were a number of members who had been absent and
Gotcha.
they could vote on meeting minutes where they were not actually present at the meeting. So
okay,
if you want to take your first official vote, you are welcome to do so.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Well then, Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
Jahan Habib.
Aye.
Lynn Richards.
Aye.
Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
And Michael Capuano.
Aye. We have meeting minutes for the 3rd. Next to the meeting minutes for October 17th, 2024. Does anybody have any suggested revisions or amendments to those draft meeting minutes? Okay, seeing none, the chair moves to adopt the draft meeting minutes of October 17, 2024 as the minutes of the planning board, seconded by Amelia. Steve, please call the roll.
Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
Jahan Habib. Oh, John, I couldn't quite hear you.
Aye.
Thank you. Lynn Richards.
Aye.
Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
And Michael Capuano.
Aye. Excellent. We have meeting minutes. I will say I am so pleased that we have staff who were able to get these draft minutes to us in an expedited way. There was a long time where we were voting on meeting minutes that were 6 to 10 to 12 months old, just because we had a backlog, and we have great staff who's able to work through that. Yes, Jahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the record, I would like to state that I was not able to attend the October 17th meeting. However, I have watched the video recording and also completed the affidavit. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Awesome. Thanks, Jahan. Next is our friends at 45 Mystic Avenue. They have requested a continuance to the December 5th meeting. I have absolutely no problem with that. Chair moves to continue that item to the December 5th meeting. Amelia seconds. Seeing no objections, Steve, can you please call the roll?
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Jahan Habib, Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Amelia Abab,
Aye.
and Michael Capuano.
Aye. Agenda item is continued. Excuse me. Next up, we have 720 to 722 Broadway. Now, it's my understanding that this applicant has two different applications in for us. One is potentially ready to go if we were to take it up, and the second is waiting until there is an actual lot merger so we can move forward on a site plan approval. But for the benefit of everybody, what I'd like to do is, if the applicant would like, open up the application, have presentations made on the project as a whole, understanding that one particular application isn't ready to be voted on yet, just so we'll have an opportunity to review the proposal and maybe hear from the public if there's anybody that wants to speak on behalf of the public. And then we'll probably take this up again in 2 weeks if they've gotten their lot merger, so we can evaluate the other vote that we have to take when we can actually do that. So if we have a representative from the applicants, the team can be unmuted. And before we do that, I would like to have Jahan read into the record the notices of public hearing for both of these items.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. 720-722 Broadway, ZP 24-000047. DiCamillo Associates LLC seeks to develop residential housing in a general building in the MR4 zoning district, which requires a special permit. 720-722 Broadway, ZP 24-000048. DiCamillo Associates LLC proposes to develop a 4-story mixed-use general building in the MR4 zoning district, which requires a site plan approval.
Thanks very much.
Welcome.
Aye.
Good evening, Chairman Capuano, members of the planning board, Attorney Ann Vigorito, 424 Broadway, Somerville, Massachusetts. I would ask that Christopher Vance, he's our architect, be promoted as a panelist as well, as he will be doing the slideshow portion.
This is Steve Carey in the planning division. Yep, I'm promoting Christopher Vance to panelist.
Thank you so much.
And I also promoted Katya Padziatlo. Katya, are you part of the development team?
Yes,
Steve.
my landscape architect.
Great.
All right. Well, I will begin. As I said, Ann Vigorito. First of all, I want to introduce our development team. So DiCamillo Associates, they're the owner as well as the developer for this project. Christopher Vance from Vance Stein is our architect. Landscape architect Katya Padziatlo of Verdant Landscape Architecture. And then our traffic, mobility, and civil engineers is Thomas Laughlin from GM2. And as the chair had stated, this is one of these situations where the lot isn't necessarily zoning compliant at this time. We've had some meetings, so hopefully by the next one, everything will be in good form. But this is a proposal to construct a 4-story general building in an MR4 zoning district. There will be 28 residential units, 5 of which will be affordable. The first level will be over 7,000 square feet of commercial space. And here's the exciting part. It will be the new and improved state-of-the-art home for Lindell's Bakery. This was, and I'll get into the neighborhood meetings. They were both very well received, but you know, the big topic, and I anticipated maybe even this evening, because we all remember what happened to Patsy's in East Somerville. You know, it was promised they're going to leave, but they're going to have a great place after, and it never happened. I know this well because my partner handled that one, and you know, he was even more so upset. But what'll happen is during construction, Lindell's will actually be moved steps away, so they're never really going to be closed. You know, maybe for a weekend to move, but they'll never be closed. They're going to be a few steps away. Once the new building and the new site is ready to go, he will move back in. And actually, George Gladys, who is the owner of Lindell's, is even here this evening in case it's necessary, because he's going to speak on how excited and supportive he is. So just to carry on, I digressed a little bit because I get excited about bakeries. This is a pedestrian street. We are within a quarter mile of a transit walk shed. So no parking is generally required, but we will have 4 spaces on the site for delivery trucks, ride shares. You know, we've seen what has happened over the years. So this is something, you know, we definitely want to have on the site. So we did have 2 very well-received neighborhood meetings. They were well attended. The first one was May 3rd of 2003. The second was December 12th of 2023. And Lance Davis did host both of those. They were on Zoom. You know, the general range of question about, you know, construction, traffic, you know, we were very thorough in answering and talking with abutters, even separately. I know the owner met with some of the abutters that had some questions, and I believe they were all taken care of. We were at the UDC for several meetings back in June 27th, August 8th, and September 26th of 2023. So the the plans you'll see this evening is, you know, what the UDC gave their quote unquote stamp of approval on, even though the planning board is the permit granting authority. This is what they came up with that they liked, and we're hoping you'll like it. But Chris Vance and I worked thoroughly. He, you know, one portion of the building that was by an MOA, which we worked heavily with historical, and they were very, very happy, you know, with that portion of it. So that MOA has been in place, and you know, I'm not going to speak too much longer. It is a LEED gold certifiable building, passive house certification. So I am now going to hand it off to Chris Vance because he's going to do the slideshow portion, and then whatever questions the board may have, we will be available. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Anne. Will I be able to share my screen? It says it's disabled at the moment. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Steve. Is there a way to make sure that he's able to present?
Yes, Steve Carey, PPZ. I will should be giving you presenting abilities now.
Okay, yep, I got it.
Great.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. You should be seeing the cover sheet here. My name's Chris Vance from Vance Stein Architects, 85 San Fonso Drive in Beverly, Massachusetts. I will be presenting today on our proposed project for 720, 722 Broadway. Anne already introduced our project team, but I will pull it up here again. We do have everyone in attendance tonight, so if we do have any questions about landscape, traffic, mobility, we'll be able to address those questions. So I wanted to start with sort of the evolution of Ball Square. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Ball Square, but it's very near and dear to my client. They are generational residents of Ball Square. So they've seen the transition that Ball Square has gone through and sort of where it's ended up today, and in the future, especially with the new T station. So back in the early 1800s, Ball Square was just a pasture, and then it the Lowell Boston connector commuter rail was formed, and a lot of residential units started forming in the early 1900s. So you can see here on the historic map on the left, you have a lot of uniform residential units that were popping up along Broadway and divided up into Willow, Loudon, and the streets that are formed there today. As we brought in more residents, there were need for commercial services such as dentists, restaurants, grocery stores, bakeries. And you started to see Ball Square's fabric change. So it was starting to take a lot of the residential units that were getting torn down, and you're getting these single-story commercial spaces. You also see a lot of the residences that have had storefronts sort of glommed onto them, and they've transformed over time. So here's a little snapshot of the intersection of Bristol Road, Willow Ave, and Broadway. So here in the red is our site. It's actually going to be, as you heard earlier, we're going to be merging 3 lots into 1 lot. So that 1 lot will become roughly 11,000 square feet and forming a single lot. These images that we've pulled here show the sort of fabric. It's very eclectic in Ball Square. So you do see some of the gambrel style, shingle style multifamilies that are still present. You can see a lot of single-story storefronts, and you also see a mix of 2-story and 3-story mixed-use buildings. Here on the left is an image looking from Bristol towards the site. So on the right is 722 Broadway, which is that cream-colored gambrel multifamily. Which is actually what we had to go in front of the Historic Preservation Commission for the demo review, which I'll speak about a little bit later on. On the left, you can see the iconic Lindell's, which is an Art Deco, a single-story brick building. And then across the street, you can actually see a 4-story gambrel multifamily that's had those additions, those storefronts added to it. The photo on the right is looking up Broadway at the corner of Willow and Broadway. So you can see here is the corner of Lindell's, which has this recessed entrance. It's very active. They get a lot of business. The Lindell's Bakery sign, that's the leaf sign that's hanging off there. A very interactive intersection. This photo on the left is looking down Willow towards Broadway. So this is the backside of Lindell's Bakery. They do have a parking lot back there, which is the 3rd lot of this site. And you'll see further in the presentation how that's getting changed in the proposed design. The photo on the right is looking up Broadway, so back towards Lindell's at the corner of Broadway and Willow. So as Anne had mentioned, we are a MR4 general building. So not going to bore you with this full matrix here, but we do meet the zoning requirements for the MR4 and also the form-based code. So if you have any questions about that during the presentation, feel free to stop me and I can go through that. And as Anne mentioned, we are in a quarter mile from the transit area. So we are not required to have any on-site parking, but as Anne described, we do have 4 parking spots, 2 of which are for the commercial space employees only. They would not be for the residents. We also do have a ride share spot and an ADA spot. So I'm going to start with the pretty pictures here first. So here you can see a proposed rendering of the project. So this is looking at that corner from Willow and Broadway. So you can see we are a 4-story mixed-use building. So we're going to have 1st floor, which is going to be predominantly commercial space and the residential entrance. And then we have 3 stories of residence. And there's a mix of studios, 1 bedrooms, and 2 bedrooms. And as Anne mentioned, through the Historic Commission, we work closely with them to develop the Broadway facade. They really wanted to have the building look like 2 distinct structures, but not completely distinct, that you don't understand that they're have the same program and are part of the same building. So the way that we designed it is to bring in some historic brick and brick detailing with the corbelled bricks, the precast fascias, a strong parapet that grounds the top floor, and then also the punched windows. So you get that sort of classic, downtown brick punched window building. But then as you move to the left, we used projected bays, lots of glazing and similar materials, but in different colors to connect the two. You can also see that we used horizontal ribbons, which really connect the floor plates. We also designed it so that we are making the public realm and the pedestrian way very active. So we stepped back the facade so that we have some outdoor dining, which we worked with UDC, which was a suggestion from them to increase that public realm so that as pedestrians and visitors are coming to Lindell's, they have a space to like pull off, sit down, enjoy a pastry. We also recessed the entry back, which is really kind of a nod to the existing or the current Lindell's entrance, which is sort of recessed back off the sidewalk. Again, just pulling people in and activating that space. This is a view looking back towards Willow. Again, you can see the front facade that's pulled back, and we have the outdoor dining. So this is the elevation looking up Willow Street. Again, we use the projected bays to add some interest and some relief to the facade. But as you move up Willow, the scale becomes more residential and less of the commercial front. So you can see that the projected bays don't go all 3 stories. They sort of capped at the 3rd floor or at the 4th floor. We also have a amenity space, and I'll show you earlier with a green roof at the 4th floor. And then here you can see the curb cut where we do have the parking, and this is also a service drive. So Lindell's can receive deliveries. It also helps create a better safe pedestrian and vehicular traffic that they can have a zone to pull off the street and not congest it while they're receiving deliveries. And also you'll see later in the landscape design that we created this little garden retreat in the back corner. This is also the southern face, so this is going to get a lot of sun, so that amenity space up on the top floor and also the garden below are going to have a lot of sun during the day. This is a view looking at the public realm from Broadway. So again, you can see that there's a lot of glazing, making the space very active, engaged. So you get that experience with Lindell's Bakery, which currently it's more condensed. It's not as open. So this is really creating a great storefront and transparent space for them. Also, just really activating Ball Square and giving a space for people to enjoy Lindell's. So this is taking a quick look at all the zoning requirements. So the max and minimum setbacks, the gross floor area, and how we've organized the site. I think the renderings gave you a good idea of how the site's organized, but the front lower, the north side is Broadway. On the left is Willow going up. So you can see that we have a new curb cut here. So this is the service drive in the rear of the building, and these are the 4 parking spaces that we've created. And this is that garden retreat in the top right corner, so that the residents can go and enjoy that space. It's going to be heavily planted, some nice shade trees, and a hardscaped area with some benches. And again, here on the Broadway side, again, you can see how the building steps back and really draws people into the entrance of Lindell's. The 2nd and 3rd floor, the floor plates are exactly the same. And then here up on the 4th floor, you can see that we step back the floor plate and that you have a roof deck terrace amenity space. This goes into a little more detail. So we do have a lower level. We're going to take advantage of the basements that are in both the buildings, so that we can provide additional residential storage and retail storage. We're working closely with Bill Galatis, the owner of Lindell's, to actually design out the space now. He needs about 7,000 square feet. He's currently undersized for what he needs, so this is going to provide him that additional space so that he can actually increase his facility. So below would be a lot of storage, cold storage and refrigeration. Up on the ground floor would be the new retail space. So there'd be the front of the house and the back of the house where they do all of the production and cooking. We're also working to have some display windows where we actually have working space that you can see them making bread or you can see them making pastries. So it's going to be very active and engaged. This is the second and third floor. So you can see that it's a mix of 2 beds, studios, and 1 bed. So on level 2, we have 12 units comprised of 8 studios, 3 1-beds, 1 2-bed. On the third floor, we have 10 units comprised of 4 studios, 4 1-beds, and 2 2-beds. Moving up to the 4th floor, this is where the floor plate steps back and we have a shared amenity space with the green roof. And on this floor, we have 6 units, 1 studio, 3 1-beds, and 2 2-beds. And as Ann mentioned, we do have 5 affordable units, which are distributed throughout the building. So this is the front elevation looking at Broadway. Here I've designated the area that was under the MOA through the HPC. So because this is the 722 Broadway site, which is the existing multifamily, because it's over 75 years, we had to work with the HPC. So we developed this elevation. So again, as I explained, having 2 buildings, but tied together with the architectural elements. So the punch windows, brick, using different colors of brick. And then as the materials, or as the building gets higher, the materials get lighter. And it just it comes together in a nice composition. This is the Willow Ave elevation. As you move from Broadway up Willow Ave, you actually gain about 2 feet in elevation. So you can see that the walkway and the space actually moves up and gets a little more compressed towards the rear of the site. This is the back elevation. So you can see the residential units will have Juliet balconies, and then up on the 4th floor, that outdoor amenity space. And then the parking is under the 2nd floor, and it's also going to have screening on the Willow side, so you won't see any of the cars as they're sitting there. Is everyone still seeing my screen okay? Okay, great. So this is the west elevation. This is just looking back towards the building that's between the multifamily and our building. This is a slide just showing the proposed signage. We're proposing the signage will be on the corner of both Broadway and Willow Ave. And here's our landscape plan that I'll try to do justice to. I know Katya would be better describing it all, but Katya, feel free to jump in if I miss anything. But as I described earlier, you can see we're proposing to add 2 new street trees along Broadway. We're also adding a new street tree on Willow and also protecting the existing street tree on Willow. There is the back garden. You can see it's going to be heavily vegetated. There will be a nice hardscaped space to sit and enjoy and kind of escape your units and hang out back there. We do have long-term residential bike storage that's locked. We also have an enclosed trash space for both the commercial and the residential use. And you can see here that the main residential lobby is off of Willow. And that's where the elevator will have a mail package room, meeting space, and the mechanical space. Again, along the pedestrian way here on Broadway, we pull it back. We have some nice permeable pavers. So it's really creating a zone that's sort of separate of the public sidewalk. It's also, it's increasing the width of the sidewalk, but it gives you a little more texture and kind of ties you into a space that's more to slow down and observe what's happening. We'll also be using all native plant species that's described in the proposed plant list. This plan here is showing the amenity space up on the 4th floor. So we do have some hardscape pedestal pavers. We're gonna have a mix of lightweight planter boxes, vegetated green roof, and then using a ballast along the perimeter with some river stone, as you see in these precedent images on the right. So we are at a green score of 0.25, so we meet the target for the MR4 zone. We are also working with Linnea Associates. They've already run the energy model. We are LEED gold certifiable following Passive House. Working with GM2, they've through mobility and access here, you can see the different modes of transportation. So these red lines here are showing the pedestrian access routes and also the main principal entrances to the building. Here showing our long-term and short-term parking, or bike storage and bike racks. So we do have 32 proposed long-term enclosed, protected bike storage towards the rear of the site here. We do have 2 proposed short-term bicycle parking spaces near the rear where the vehicular spots are. And then we're showing some additional 6 proposed short-term biking spots along Willow and Broadway. Here again, this is just a study showing the vehicular circulation, showing that we can get a small truck in there for deliveries, also for picking up trash. Again, like I said, this is creating a safer zone so that we don't have to pull up on Willow, unload the truck, create a bottleneck. So we are able to pull that off of onto the site. And this again is just looking at a vehicular car and its accessibility. So this splash sheet sort of speaks to what Anne was talking about for the plot merger. So you can see we are combining 3 lots. So it's lot 5, 4, and 6. So those lots all have to be combined to make us zoning compliant for the density that we're looking to achieve, which is the 28 units. So at 11,000 square feet, we're able to get the 28 units for the building. I think that ends what I have, but be happy to address any questions. So I will turn it back to Anne.
Thank you, Chris. So that is our presentation. I am assuming at this time you'll be opening up for public comments. So, or whatever. I mean,
Exactly right.
Okay.
I don't have any comments at this point. I will after we hear from the public. I have some comments, I have some questions, as I'm sure my colleagues do as well. Does anybody have anything that they would like to address at this point? Any questions of the applicant or of staff before I open up to public testimony? I actually have to adjust this because I can't see any of you because you're all tiny boxes. Amelia, did you raise your hand?
No, sir.
Okay. Thought I saw some. Okay, so what I'd like to do then is open it up to public testimony for anybody that would like to speak in support of the application. I'm not necessarily going to put a timer on testimony tonight, but bear in mind, this is not the only item on the agenda. We have a number of other things. So if you could, anybody that wants to speak can hit the exercise, the raised hand button, and just keep timing this in the back of your mind if you could do that, please. I'll call on you in the order in which I see you. Well, I did see a couple of raised hands a few minutes ago. I do not see any. Wait. I see 2. Okay, the first person I see is Frank Foley. So if Frank Foley can please be unmuted.
Frank, this is Steve Carey in PPZ. You're unmuted on our end. You'll just unmute yourself on your end.
I just clicked the button. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not speaking in favor of the proposal. I'm a member of the public. I live next door to where this building will be, and I have lots of concerns about this. You've talked a lot and showed lots of pictures of the building and about aesthetics, but you haven't addressed things about the utilities that it will require. For example, in the documents, references made to you need to check out, or someone needs to check out whether the sewer system and storm sewer systems are sufficient to carry the load that will be added from having this new building here with all the new people living there. And I have no idea how that will be checked or if it will be done in a way that makes the sewer system safe for those of us that are still on that system, so that nothing backs up into our basement as a result of having this building be there. I don't know anything about whether the current electrical power distribution and power lines have sufficient capacity such that when you add this new building with all the new people there, there's sufficient capacity there. Years ago, we used to have power failures fairly commonly in our area. It hasn't happened so much recently that I know of, but with that new building there, with all the extra load there, are we going to have power failures in high demand times now? No one has said anything about this. I don't know that it's something that you're looking into. I asked about these kind of things at a previous meeting, and I was told this isn't the time to ask, and we're going to look into this and we'll check it out and it'll be taken care of. But I haven't seen any testimony or diagrams or studies to indicate that this sort of thing has been done. Also, right now there's a drain in the middle of the parking lot there. So when there's heavy rain, you know, we all know what it's like to live here. Sometimes we get a couple of inches in a day, a few inches in a day. Well, if we get a severe storm like that with that building there, is that rain going to hit the roof and fall off the roof and fall into our yard and flood our area? I haven't heard any discussion of that. I mean, you've shown lots of landscape and pictures of trees and things like that, but what happens when there's 3 inches of rain in a couple of hours? Where does that water go? I don't see anything in those diagrams or heard anything in the discussion about that. So I'm concerned about the utilities that are necessary for a building of this size in this space in an area where I'm not sure that the present utility setup is sufficient for that. Also, I'm concerned about what happens with our house that's well over 100 years old when the demolition of the current building starts and when the construction of the new building starts. We live right next to that. Are we going to have cracks open up in the plaster of our walls? And when stuff like this happens, I don't know what to do, who to call, how to stop whatever potential damage is happening. And so I'd like to hear some discussion of this sort of thing before the project is done, rather than wait and see what happens once the project is started. And so I have concerns like that. And I realize that I've spoken for a long time, and I thank you for letting me do that. But I live right next door to there, and I'm really concerned about what's going to happen. And I just haven't heard these sorts of issues addressed. So that's my concern. Thank you very much, and I'll stop talking now. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Pollard. The next person that I see is Eilish Brown. So if Eilish Brown could please be unmuted.
Eilish, this is Steve Carey, PPZ. You've been unmuted on our end. You just have to unmute on your end.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I live in Union Square. I just have a few questions about this building. I don't particularly object to it. I just would like a little clarification on a few points. The first one is the affordable units. You didn't, I didn't see what size they would be or where they would be distributed in the building, as in, are they all north facing or where are they? I was also curious because something like 12 trees are being removed from Tufts Street in the coming months. I was curious about the trees, the species that you're anticipating using on the sidewalk here, and how big what would the word be, tree wells perhaps, would be, because it seems like all of these trees, not actually very far from where this would be, are dying because I suspect they've run out of root space. And then my last question was just clarification on whether the owner of Lindell's will own the unit that they are occupying, or will they be renting it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just some public notes. Certainly feel free to raise questions that we can discuss at a later point, but this isn't, I think you understand, this isn't a back and forth at this point in the evening, or in the discussion of this project overall. But thank you for raising those points that we can discuss, as well as those raised by Mr. Farley earlier. The next person I see is Crystal Huff. So if Crystal Huff could please be unmuted. And if you've already spoken, please put your hand down so I don't get confused.
Hi there. My name is Crystal Huff. I'm over in Ward 5. I wanted to, and I apologize for arriving partway through the presentation, so I may have missed this detail, but I want to highlight that I am hoping to know through the project in some fashion how many of the affordable units will also be ADA accessible units. It's a huge need in the community to have ADA accessible, affordable units. And there's a huge lack. We literally had displacement of the chair of the Commission for Persons with Disabilities because she could not find an ADA accessible, affordable unit in Somerville. And so she can't be chair anymore. I also just want to highlight, I agree with Frank Varley's concerns about what happens when there's a problem with construction. Normally, I would look up the lawyer on record, but Attorney Vigorito isn't necessarily always accessible for members of the community who are multiple marginalizations. So just wanted to highlight that concern as well. I know there's not back and forth, but wanted to highlight it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak in support of the application, please raise your hand. Going once, going twice. Close that portion of the public hearing and open up to anybody that would like to speak in opposition to the application or otherwise express concern. That's your raised hand. Once, twice. Seeing none, I'll close that portion of the public hearing. We'll open it up to comments and questions and discussion by members of the board. I have a few that I would like to bring up, including sharing some of the questions, at least, from the members of the public that spoke. So before we kind of open it up, I'm wondering if staff or a representative of the applicant can talk about some of the utility issues that that were raised about stormwater runoff, sewer load, electrical load. I think this is all dealt with by ISD or other relevant departments, but I just want to make sure that we've considered all of the questions that were raised about.
Chairman Capuano, there
Yes.
will be there's going to be a transformer, but Chris Vance is going to talk to stormwater. I mean, Somerville requires a very rigorous application process, and he's been knee deep in it. So I'm going to have him speak to the electrical and stormwater.
Okay.
Great. Yeah. So yeah, as Ann said, we do have an on-site below grade transformer. So that will supply, the necessary power for the residential units in the commercial space. We will have a MEP engineer on board who will be designing that system. So they'll be appropriately sizing transformer that we need, how many watts it will bring into the site. We are passive house, going for passive house certification. So what that does is it creates a very highly efficient building. So our loads should be low and sort of condensed in the power consumption per unit. So, we'll be looking at all electric heat pumps, which are all very efficient. So when we start to look at the overall building with the solar performance of the windows, the building envelope insulation, all of these things help to reduce the actual load consumption of the building. And that reduces the stress on the local municipality. Also for stormwater, we will be following all the guides from Somerville. So we're looking at stormwater retention on site, so that any of the water that falls onto the building will be collected into a stormwater retention system. We're also using permeable pavers. So what this does is this allows rainwater and wash to actually permeate into the site versus becoming an impermeable surface where it just washes off into the street and puts an additional stress on those systems.
And for concerns about potential, I mean, obviously we all live in a city and we're all very close to each other, and I've got construction going on down the street from my house as well. And construction can create certain concerns for older homes that are nearby. I'm just wondering if there is a person that you can point to who would be a point person for concerns for neighbors who are having issues related to any construction damage to their property or anything like that.
Sure. Yep. Well, we'll have a full construction management plan. So that will be available. So we'll be looking at site safety, circulation in and out, work hours. And then in terms of the construction disturbance, again, that would be addressed in a CMP plan. But there will also be a representative from the contractor and the owner, DeCamillo Associates, that anyone can reach out to if they're concerned or there's an issue with the site or the construction.
I think so. I've got some other questions that overlap with some of the questions that the public raised. So I'm going to talk about my questions and comments in a little bit. But does anybody else have any comments, questions of the applicant or of staff? Any points of discussion from the board? Yeah, Amelia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have just two items I was hoping that Mr. Vance could clarify for us. I believe there was an area in the basement level that was labeled bike lounge, and I wonder if you could walk me through how a bicycle gets there.
Chris, I think you're on mute.
Oh, now can you hear me? Sorry about that.
Yes.
Yeah, so they could take their bike down in the elevator if they wanted to bring it down into the basement space.
Sorry, when I was looking at this ahead of the meeting, I couldn't really see the path of travel that would be sensible. Would you just humor me and walk me through where we're coming in? So I've got my bicycle and I'm a resident, I'm coming from outside and I want to bring it to the area labeled bike lounge.
Yep, so can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. So there's a set of double doors here.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually have it striped off for no parking. So if you are coming up Willow, you go into the site here, you can enter through these double doors. And then you would go into the residential bike storage lounge, which is actually in the back here. So we have 32 spaces for bike storage. And that's at the grade level.
Okay, that's at grade. That's not a basement level.
No, the basement level is on the left here. That's below that. Yeah. So the bike storage is actually at grade, and it's you can see it here, which has 32 spaces.
Perfect. Thank you so much for confirming.
Yeah, no problem.
Amelia?
That's it for now. Thank you.
Okay. Lynn, I see Lynn's hand.
Yeah, so I was looking at 722 and 729 Broadway, and if you look at the existing building to 729, it looks like there's a fair amount of space. With the new building, it looks as though that space is shortened and thereby significantly reducing the amount of natural light that's coming into 729. I understand that we're all kind of, it's a dense neighborhood. Really appreciate a lot of aspects of this design, but did any sort of mitigation factors that you've considered to help with the natural light for 729?
Yeah, so we did do a full shadow study. So it's not in this presentation, but it is uploaded to CitizenServe. So you can see we studied like the existing, the 722 building, it being, 2.5, almost 3 stories, and the shadows that were cast onto 729. So there is some impact with the new building, just because it is another, story above. But so, taking that into consideration, also we've added a bunch of that garden in the back, so it's going to also let some additional light in the backyard. And then also just looking at materials when we're working with the UDC, we wrapped that side of the building in brick. Originally, we had more of a cementitious material, so that we actually, to give it some more texture and a little bit of richness at that level, so it didn't feel as sort of stark.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Who else? Luke.
Thanks. I have a question that's almost entirely for my own education, but I'm a little confused about the process that went through the Historic Preservation Commission, and just maybe this is helpful for others too. So this design to make it appear like 2 structures is somehow in response to the Historic Preservation Commission. Could you just describe that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure.
Chris, you know what, Chris, you can, we had several meetings, and I'll have, Chris obviously as the architect can explain the rationale, but I do, the biggest, most emphasized point was they wanted it to look like 2 different buildings. So it's funny that the question comes up now, but Chris, maybe you can step it through on, because Chris had come up with various designs.
Yeah, so the HPC found 722 to be preferably preserved. So, implementing a demo delay. But they do have a memorandum of agreement. So if you work with them on the design of the proposed building, that demo delay, there's a waiver. So we worked very closely with them to come up with this preferred scheme here. We went through many different iterations, and they were pretty adamant about it looking like 2 separate buildings, but joined in a way that architecturally they harmonize. So we went through various iterations. They wanted us to use traditional materials, so and detailing. So we've have the corbelled brick with the precast frieze at the parapet level, which was a detail that they specifically really enjoyed and actually mentioned in the MOA if you take a look at it. So looking at the materials that we're using, the sort of traditional detailing, we came to an agreement on the design that they have approved. So that's sort of the process and how we ended up here.
And I don't know if you want me to add a little bit about the HPC process, because before you apply for a demolition permit, but then you're required to go through historical. There's two meetings. The first one determines whether or not a building is significant. This building was deemed significant, and therefore we had to go to a second meeting, which is when they determine if it's should be preferably preserved. Some buildings are not. This one was, and instead of having to wait that 18-month window, Chris and myself worked diligently with each historical staff to get to this, and you sign that MOA, because we can't even apply for zoning until the demo delay ends or we have an MOA. So, that's why, before we even get to you folks, we do all this other legwork to present it to you. And, historical, that's what they wanted as far as, for renderings and how it would look. And yeah, Chris went through many alliterations, and they loved it in the end. So if there's anything else that I missed, let me know, because it is a little bit of a confusing process maybe, but if there's anything else, let me know.
Thanks. That is helpful for me. And I'm curious, mostly just for my own learning about how this all works, and this is just an interesting case study. And I'll just say, this is to ourselves as a community in Somerville, not to the project team, but and I say this with some humility, because there may well be important details I'm missing, but this seems like a crazy process. And if the Historic Preservation Commission thinks that building has historic importance, that's one thing, but why would they be involved in the design process on something that is totally different from that thing they wanted to preserve? I just don't get. And then we've got three bodies playing a role in designing the building: the Historic Preservation, the Urban Design Commission, and us. Just seems like such a maze. So
Luke, welcome to government.
Yeah. And I can see it'd be frustrating to navigate for people trying to get stuff done in our city. But I'm off the soapbox.
Let's see, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll start off with kudos. Really appreciate the applicant team for being on video and engaging us. I feel like this remote world is already tough, so it's really good to see faces and know who we're working with. So thank you for that. Second, as I would like to kind of tip my hat to the community, I feel like the outreach both in the neighborhood meetings as well as at this meeting as well has been spot on and very focused on key issues for this project. So thank you to everyone who has engaged in the public process to date. And to that end, there's one line of questions that came up in the neighborhood meetings that I wanted to specifically highlight, which was around bedroom count distribution within the units, right? So there's a lot of studios, a lot of one bedrooms. Clearly, there's a lot of need for those, but I'd like to understand your rationale a little bit around your exclusion of 3 and/or 4 bedroom units. If you could just give me a little bit of your rationale there and maybe understand whether or not that's something that you are open to moving a bit on, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
This is Attorney Ann Vigorito again. Turn my camera back on. I'm also going to ask Chris Vance to join in. Some of the rationale is, based on like market studies. This is very close to a transit walk shed. And, you find that you're going to find a lot of commuting people, that are looking for the 1 and the 2 beds. This is not, I'm involved in other development projects, and I constantly hear they have the hardest time renting the 3 beds. So that is somewhat of it. I will have Chris expand upon it, but that was my input with the development team. And, I'll have Chris, expand a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, when we're working with the development team, they did look at, did a market analysis to look at what units made sense in this area, because we are within a quarter mile of a transit area, and we have no parking. It's not you know, having no parking, it makes it difficult when you have a 3 or 4 bedroom unit, which is for families. And typically families need a car. And, you know, because we don't have any on-site parking, you know, that mix becomes difficult. So we really focused on the, you know, one bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and studios.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to avoid cross-examination here. I don't want to litigate or anything like that, but I'm struck. I'm struggling a little bit with that response because that does kind of exclude the possibility of a family being, you know, pedestrian based, right? This is basically saying that we only want to have families, you know, live out somewhere where they have cars accessible, and especially with the reduction of parking in the area, which, you know, I'm generally supportive of. I think we should be inclusive of families, you know, above those 1 bedroom needs. So I you know, I don't have a hard ask of, hey, I'd like to see this many units, but I would really appreciate it if the applicant team, you know, took a hard look at the distribution of units and thought about maybe adding a 3 or 4 bedroom in there.
Good, Michael, anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. So I am going to thank you very much, Michael, actually, for raising the biggest issue that I see with this application. I actually think the building is very nice. You guys did a wonderful job with the building. I like the mix of more traditional architecture with some more modern stuff. So before we go into unit mix, because that's always a concern of mine, do you have a rendering of the side of the building that actually faces the other multifamily home? Because I think you did, and there was just a blank wall, and then you ended up indicating that it was a brick facade. Yeah, so I'm looking at that, and so where is what am I looking at here?
Yeah, so we have a mix of materials. So here at the grade level, we have a brick. And then as you move up to the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor is a cementitious material.
So that's okay. That's what I thought it was. And then you said it was brick, and then apparently it's only partially brick. That to me is pretty bland. You know, if I'm driving up, you know, Willow or, you know, Broadway, fine, I can see the building. The building is very pretty. But if I'm living next to the building and I'm looking out of my, you know, I live on the 2nd floor of my house. I'm going to see a blank cement wall. That to me is not an ideal level of respect for people who are going to live next to this and have to look out their, you know, bedroom windows or living room windows or where it's going to be to see a blank wall with no definition. So what I'd like you to do,
yeah, so it will be it will be a siding material, not like a concrete.
Do you have some of that visualization of that blown up so I can actually see, so it doesn't just look like a concrete wall?
Yeah.
Like I should, you know,
Yeah, I apologize. Yeah, do you see number 4 here, the fiber cement lap siding?
Yeah.
So it's that would be a lap siding. So it would have some texture. It wouldn't be a solid concrete wall.
All right. What I'd like you to do the next time you come to us, because we're not going to take a vote on this tonight, obviously, for a number of reasons, is I'd like to see a blown up, clarified view of what that siding would look like on what looks like the vast majority of the building that faces people that will be looking at it for the majority of the time that they're home. So,
yeah, absolutely, no problem.
Yep. The planning board has a long-standing position, even, you know, before I got on the board, that you don't forget the side of a building and just pretend it's the back of the building. Nobody cares about it. So I want to make sure that we continue that effort in making sure that each side of the building is respectful for people that have to look at it, you know, irrespective of the duration of time that they're looking at it. So, you know, I drive up that way to go home all the time, so my view will be pretty, but I also don't live next door. So that's part one. Part two is my question about the unit mix. I understand that you said what's going to play best next to a T-stop and all this stuff. First of all, I want to thank you, Chris, for being a developer that's actually saying reality and the truth is that yes, most families do have cars, right? So that'll be a discussion for the next couple of weeks where we take up something, and I think Michael and I are going to tangle for a bit, and then we'll buy each other a beer. But yes, so I mean, the reality and the numbers do bear out that yes, most families do have cars in some way, at least one. But notwithstanding that, I am concerned with the fact that we as a community, this project among many others, aren't building enough family-sized housing, even one or two. The unit count is actually not that big of a problem to me. It's the unit mix that I find a little bit of a concern, because what we're doing, most of the homes in that neighborhood, my mother, grew up around the corner and was born and raised there, and my uncle lived there until about a few years ago. He passed. They're big old homes. A lot of units do have 2-3 bedrooms, and that's not that's not something to shake a stick at. This is a family-based neighborhood. And I think it's a little weird that we're not building a family-sized unit, even one, in a brand new building on top of Lindell's, which has been a fixture in the neighborhood for decades and decades and decades and decades. It just seems to me like projects like this. We have the old city slogan, a great place to live, work, play, and raise a family. That maybe we should just strike that last portion, because we're just not building enough housing that will support people with multiple children. It's a very different city than the one I grew up in. And so what I'd like you to be able to do is come to us with an iteration next time as well, or in the future, whenever we take this up for a vote, that does show a possibility for an additional multi-bedroom unit, 1, 2, I'm not saying make the entire building 3 4-bed units, but I think something more than just a smattering of 2 bedrooms is I think appropriate for this site, based on what the neighborhood is, where you are. If I was married with a couple of kids, I would absolutely love to be able to live across the street from the T. That would be awesome, and I don't want to be precluded from that, because we're not building units large enough to accommodate that within such a close proximity to transit. So I would like to see an option that, if the planning board agrees, is the better one, to have at least 1 3-bedroom unit. It doesn't necessarily have to be the affordable unit, but it certainly wouldn't help if that turned out to be the case. So that's kind of my biggest concern, was the unit mix. And you've now got a concern from both me and one other member. So and it was also raised in the public comments, and it was raised in the community meetings. So it sounds like there is a little bit of a desire beyond just just my view on this, that we might want to have you consider changing some of this unit mix and make this a more perfect project, because it is a great project. I don't mean to disparage you. I actually think it's a wonderful application. You guys have done a great job. I think it can be made better.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Chairman Capuano, my only concern is, and I'm obviously going to go back with the team, between now and the next meeting, is, and not for the affordable, but for a regular unit, I don't think they would be able to have a parking permit if that was the case. I'm trying to, this is going to be something that, we'll brainstorm in between, but those are things that are coming to my mind right now.
Mm-hmm. You're right. Well, you are building some parking underground, and I'm not sure, how that's going to be allocated. Maybe one of the 4 could be designated for that larger unit. Or the family may choose not to have a vehicle. I mean, that's okay too. But the reality is they probably will, but I'd like them to have the option. I'd like our consideration of this project to include at least one bigger unit. I see Lynn's hand.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciated, but both you guys are both Michaels. Your comments. What struck me in the mobility plan was the absence of any mention of car share. You had detailed analysis of bus stops with fairly significant headways. If you're traveling on the weekends, the T stop is right there. You've got the bike share, the blue bikes right across the street. But when you look at Zipcar, you've got to actually cross the bridge over the T and then or go in the other direction closer to Powderhouse Square. So as we talk about the family units, and I agree-ish with Michael as a family person who actually never owned a car. You've got 4 spots there. You have some potential street parking on the side. What about including a car sharing that is more centrally located to the building? So that addresses some of the, because we've got a car sharing program within Somerville, but if you're going to have a family and you've got to walk 2 blocks one way or the other, that might not be convenient. So is it possible to allocate one of the parking spots less for ride share, which they're going to get picked up on the street, and more for kind of a permanent car share there? So that's something that might help thread the needle there. More broadly, I do think including car share as part of your mobility analysis going forward, looking at all of the mobility options that the citizens of Somerville have towards them, might be helpful.
Thank you. One other question that I want to raise real quickly is one that I meant to raise in my earlier discussion with you. Is we did have some public comment and question about the ADA accessibility of the units, particularly the affordable units. I'm wondering if you might be able to address that. And the fact is, it is concerning if there is a significant lack of ADA accessible affordable units in the city. That's certainly not something that we want to perpetuate.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll be required to have accessible units, per code. So that there will definitely be accessible units in the building.
Will those accessible units be any of the designated affordable inclusionary units? Because that was the crux of the concern of the person who testified, and that's not something, as someone who does not have to consider ADA accessibility in my life. I want to make sure that we are making the best effort that we can to welcome as many folks as we can with different mobility issues.
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't had a direct conversation about it, but we talked to the development team, but we'll definitely be offering accessible units. So I will definitely talk about the AMI units.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, to the maximum extent that we can, like next time we meet, to have a clearer idea of which those will be and where they will be in the building. So.
When the AMI units are selected, it's by a different committee, so they select them themselves. So that distribution and unit mix. So we'll certainly work with the team on that.
Thanks for letting me know that. So Steve, actually, it would be informative for me at some point, not tonight for sure, to have a discussion on how some of these decisions are made, by which boards and what things are considered, because if, it's not necessarily the purview of the planning board to say, and this unit shall be, an accessible unit. And it's the purview of a different responsible body. I'd just like to know how those decisions are made, what those discussions look like, what the process looks like.
Sure.
If there are ways to petition it, just for the same reason Luke was asking some questions about process, so am I.
Sure, absolutely.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions of the applicant or of staff at this point before we table this until the next meeting? I see Michael's hand again.
I just wanted to raise my hand for the vice chair. She has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I didn't see you.
Thank you, Michael. No, I just wanted to add one more piece of information to our list of requests on the accessible units. Mr. Vance, I don't know if you know offhand, or if you could just in the conversation next time be prepared to speak about whether they're type A units or type B units that have been provided in the plan so far.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Trying to see, I gotta adjust this so you're not just tiny boxes, you're slightly larger boxes to make sure I'm not missing. I don't think I see anybody yet, so okay. Thank you very much, Attorney Vigorito and Chris and team for a very good discussion on this very worthwhile project. I think it is great. I think we can just maybe make it a little bit better. So what I'd like to do now is continue this agenda item to the next meeting of the planning board, which is the 9th. It's 21st. And we might be ready to vote on the 21st. We may need to, have some further discussion, but at least we'll, give you folks the opportunity to rejoin us. So,
Thank you, Chairman Capuano. We'll see you on the 21st and we'll address all the questions and concerns raised this evening.
great. Thank you. So, Chair moves continue to the 21st, seconded by Amelia. Steve, can you please call the roll?
Sure. Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Amelia Aba,
Aye.
and Michael Capuano.
Aye. Agenda item is continued. The next case that we have, or the last case that we have, before we move on to some of our other business, is 35 McGrath Highway. So what I'd like is, this is a new case. Can you please read into the record the notice of public hearing for McGrath?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I will need to recuse myself from this item, so I will sign off at this time and ask someone to let me know when it's time to rejoin the meeting.
Okay, for sure.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. 35 McGrath Highway ZP 24-000049. 35 McGrath Highway Realty Trust proposes to develop a 9-story lab building in the high-rise HR district, which requires a site plan approval.
Please have the applicant, representative and team be unmuted, screens shared, all the good stuff.
This is Steve Carey in the planning division. I'm going to promote Ken McClure to panelist. Also see a Tom Miller. Actually, just when Ken joins us, Ken, if you could just confirm the other members of the development team, that'd be great.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
All right, working on getting my camera working as well. There we go. How you
Great.
doing, everybody?
Good. Can you just confirm
so-
the other members of your development team?
Other members of the team will be Kristen Weigel,
Great.
Tom Miller, Jay Emperor, and then who else is joining us today? It looks like
I see a
Louis Kraft.
Okay.
Yep. Ian McKinnon and Masood Bakiri.
I don't see Masood.
Okay, and Jay may be representing Bowler as our landscape architects,
That's correct.
and Masood might not be on.
Correct.
Gotcha. I think you have everyone then.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time. This is certainly a long time coming. We started this process a long time ago. We've had some stops and starts along the way. We're very excited to finally be out. We've got a really exciting design that I know our architects are excited to share. It's a little bit different than everything else you've seen in the lab world. And so, tonight we've got a team. We've got our legal, Tom Miller from Miller, Pulte McDermott, Hanley Partners. We've got Kristen Weigel from Stantec. We've got Jay Emperor from Bowler, and I believe we have Ian McKinnon from HSH. We've done a number of neighborhood meetings with Brick Bottom. We've done some site visits. We've been in good contact with Leggett McCall next door, 15 McGrath, over at 51 McGrath. We've been in contact with Mass DOT, with DCAM, with just about every letter that the state has. And it's been, it's really exciting to finally be here. So with that said, I'm excited to show the project, and I'll pass it over to Tom.
Thank you, Ken. You've cut down on the type of introductions I have to do, which is great. I'm always a fan of talking last. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As Ken said, my name is Tom Miller from McDermott, Pulte, Miller and Hanley, here on behalf of 35 McGrath Realty Trust. Ken has put together a quality team, and we are here to present this project to you tonight. Kristen, I believe, is running the show, so I will do a little bit of talking, a little bit of scene setting, and then I'll turn it over to what everybody really wants to see, which is the design of this building that the Stantec team has really done a wonderful job putting together to just create a visually stunning gateway from Cambridge into Somerville. Just by way of background, this project before you tonight proposes revitalizing this underused industrial site with the construction of a new 9-story, approximately 115,000 square foot lab building. As I said, Stantec has done a wonderful job with it. The building has been designed to accommodate small research and development lab companies that need lab both from a mechanical standpoint as well as a laboratory site need. These are the type of companies that aren't serviced by large floor plate buildings with huge open spaces. They need the smaller, more intimate spaces to do what they need to do. Now I'll ask Kristen to go on to the next page, and we'll do a little bit of scene setting for everybody. First we'll start with what we've gone through. The initial development application, pre-submittal, our first neighborhood meeting. We conducted our own additional outreach to Brick Bottom aside from the neighborhood meeting, including site visits and multiple conversations with the group there. The team went through the UDC. We met again with the community. We've gone through additional development review applications, the site plan review application reports, and that brings us to where we are now. Next page, please. Just to situate everybody, for those who aren't aware of where we're at, we are at 35 McGrath, which is just on the Somerville-Cambridge border on McGrath Highway. As I said, this is Somerville's gateway in from Cambridge. Next page. Next slide. So this is the first kind of look at our parcel in its unique shape and design. It is a byproduct of taking the MDC burdened us with when they were creating the Squire Bridge to ensure access for our abutters down at 51. You can see here 51 and the existing and 15 as it was prior. And you can see the new path in behind here, same idea, same angle. You can see our existing windowless concrete block and the 51 site and the old Save More Liquors. You can see the path as it is under construction, and how that interacts with this site, which Kristen and the Stantec team will talk more about in the way they designed this building in a minute. Next slide, please. And this is the angle from the path showing what the site looks like now, and how integral it was into how we considered designing this building. Next slide. This is more scene setting, kind of looking up McGrath, looking up Squires Bridge. Our site is to the right, and we are that big windowless concrete block, which we are going to replace with something much, much better. Next slide. Another view of our wonderful building as it exists now. Next slide. So this project is located in a high-rise zoning district here along McGrath Highway. This building, you can see here where the highlight, the circle and the arrow kind of show pretty clearly. We are the edge of the high-rise zoning district abutting a mid-rise. Next slide. So as I said, this is a proposed lab building. This building will add this approval of this project will add a high-quality, well-designed, and well-thought-out commercial structure to the neighborhood, adding employment opportunities to the area, working to improve the transportation infrastructure in the area, and also increasing the commercial tax base for the city. The next slide kind of talks about the zoning relief we received. This building, as designed with this relief as granted, is compliant with the zoning ordinance. This is a brief description of the relief this project has received so far for setbacks, for the location of our driveway, and for the facade. This relief is required due to that unique shape I mentioned in the MDC taking that I mentioned earlier. That triangular shape limited our access to McGrath Highway and to the right of way, created unique design challenges for the facade of the structure. So this relief allowed us to create a building and a project maintaining access, and to design a structure in a way that isn't a weird angle edge jutting out at McGrath Highway, but to design it in a way that integrates more with the buildings around it and to keep an appropriate streetscape design. So that's kind of a brief history of the relief we got. And now I will, Kristen can go on to the next page, and I will let everybody see what they're here to see, which is the actual design of the structure, and where we started and where we're going. So Kristen, I'll let you take over from here.
Thanks, Tom. So here we have the site plan for the project, and just to orient yourselves, north is roughly page north here. So our site is in the center with 51 McGrath to the left and 15 McGrath to the right. You can see the jug handle that is being proposed here. That adds a new 90-degree intersection and a proposed signal to help mitigate traffic, as Tom had mentioned. As you're coming towards the building in a vehicle, you would enter into our below-grade parking garage here on the left side of the building. Just want to point out one of the zoning reliefs that we received was directly related to the facade and being able to keep that parallel to McGrath Highway so that we're paying respect to the highway instead of paying respect to our property line. And we felt that helped reinforce the street edge. Next, we have a typical below grade parking level. We have 3 levels of below grade garage and roughly 84 parking spaces across those 3 levels. It's a pretty typical garage approach with your ramp coming down and a circulating path around a central core. Our level 1 here, you can see that we're dealing with a relatively small site and therefore a relatively small footprint. the majority of the ground floor is back of house and MEP space. We tried to minimize that and really mitigate how much was occupying the ground floor while still being able to propose or provide a functional lab building. So you can see here the loading dock in this corner, and then adjacent other required MEP spaces to have a functional building. On the south side of the site, we have our main lobby, which is relatively small, but enters just about center to the building. Adjacent to that is the bike room, which has a direct access from the outdoors and then directly into the lobby. And then adjacent to that, as I mentioned earlier, that parking entry that takes you down to our 3-level parking garage. Here's a typical tenant floor. So we have our central core with all the required MEP and support spaces. And then the tenant space circulates around that central core, hugging the glass line on all 4 sides. Here we have a couple sections through the project that show that we are proposing the 9-story lab building, as Tom had mentioned. On top of that, we have an enclosed penthouse and then an open penthouse above that. We're directly in line with what 15 McGrath is proposing in terms of approach to sectional quality of the building. And then you can see here the entry to the garage and our 3 levels of below grade garage. I'll turn it over to Lewis, talk about the design of the architecture.
Hi there, Lewis Kraft with Stantec Architecture. So this is a view of the south coming up from 28. And this is really, it shows how there's we've got kind of a unique and striking character of the building that is both in concert with this new architectural character that's happening along McGrath, but has its own character and striking features, which were developed and selected along with UDC input. So it takes, as part of the building, the face of 15 McGrath and then builds off of it with a faceted curtain wall facade that has these unique angles and facets that both build off of and create that gateway element that Tom spoke to, but actually start to cant and lean back away from McGrath so that we're mindful of the solar impact of the building, especially to our neighbors to the west. Next slide. And here you see that character in action. There was a lot of attention paid to the character of the roof line of the building, and the UDC really pushed the design team to think about this faceted facade as being unified with the crown of the building to create a striking line that you can run all the way up the face of the building. We also worked with the UDC and with neighborhood input on the character of the screen and keeping that transparent, being again mindful of the solar impact of the facade. And then along the west face of the building, you're going to see fewer window openings, and this has to do partly with the adjacency to the property line and the need to keep the overall percentage of the windows low due to building code, but it gave us a chance to really think about the positive and the negative from a design standpoint and be playful across this facade, while also mindful of the solar and glare impacts along the face of this building. Jump to the next slide. And of course, it's not always dusk in Somerville. So here is a daytime view of 28 McGrath, and we're elevated a little bit so you can see that improved access and intersection coming off of 28 McGrath as you're really brought into the site and immediately presented with the building entry, which will be very visible from 28 and Squires Bridge. And there's really a great chance from a pedestrian experience to come over that bridge and perceive the landscaping improvements, the building uses, being able to see directly into those lab uses and be able to experience the activity that we're bringing to the ground plane from the street. Next slide. Another thing that was very important to the team, so this is a view from the north and the community path, was that we really think of every facade of this building, we treat it as the primary building facade. And that's especially important along the community path, and that experience and that same character, that unique character with the folded planes that have a horizontal sunshade that both has design character, but it also has shading and sustainability characteristics to it, is also read and brought around onto the north side of the building. There's also attention paid and some feedback that the design team took to take the terrace that you see there, bring that down a level so that the massing starts to step itself down as you're moving north along the community path, and bringing that green from that really significant terrace on the north facade of the building, bring that closer to the open space and the community path itself. And next slide, speaking of open space, I will turn it over to Bowler to talk a little bit about the landscaping.
Thank those. So the proposed plan indicates vegetation and 3 street trees in the jug handle area to the left of the plan along McGrath Highway, with a sidewalk and raised crosswalk connecting pedestrians from McGrath Highway to an inviting public plaza in front of the new building entrance. The plaza is a welcoming space enhanced with street trees, native shrubs, and perennial plantings, seating areas, bicycle racks, and stylized pervious concrete pavers that will reflect the building facade design above. Moving clockwise or planned north past the parking garage entrance, the west side of the building has a sidewalk of pervious concrete and native shrub plantings, and low maintenance decorative stone is proposed for the north side of the building. And finally, on the east side of the building, we have pervious concrete sidewalks and pervious bituminous at the loading dock entrance. And then in the plan on the right there, that is the raised terrace on the 9th floor of the building. And that includes paver patio, permanent and movable seating, vegetation, trees and raised planters. It just provides a nice, comfortable space for building users to get some fresh air and step outside. So that wraps us up.
Great, thanks very much. It was a very good presentation, very, in my opinion, nice looking building. So before I open up to public testimony, wondering if any of my colleagues have any comments or questions of the applicant or of staff at this time. Obviously, we'll have the chance to do that after testimony. Doing a quick scan, I just see Michael's hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was more just a clarifying comment because I know I had this question pop up several times when I was preparing for this stuff in the past. In this picture, there's a building to the right, 15 McGrath. That's already kind of been through our process. So it's my understanding that's been approved, and that, you know, this building isn't kind of in a vacuum, that this other building next to it, you know, has kind of already been looked over. So I just want to add that context because, again, I asked myself that question several times. So
anybody else before testimony? Comments at this time. I'm going to open it up to public testimony for anybody that wants to speak in support of the application. Again, I'm not going to put a timer on testimony, but just be mindful of the time and of our other agenda items. So I see Crystal Huff.
Hi, everyone. Crystal Huff again, they, them pronouns. I don't know if this would qualify as for or against. Sorry, it's just a public comment. I love a lot of things about this project, despite being not my average project that I come out for in Somerville. I really appreciate the comment about native plantings. I don't think Tori Antonino is on this call, but I'm going to tell her and she's going to hold you to it, just so you know. And I did want to ask a question. I know this isn't a Q&A response time, but I did want to ask, the thing that I know about this area is that it's really hard to get across the McGrath. And I believe that to still be true even after the changes that are coming up with regard to McGrath. And I'm looking at that first floor and I just want to ask, did the development team consider putting a coffee shop or a sandwich shop in there for the tenants? I think it would be a really good thing to consider if you haven't. It would be very supportive of the community in general, and particularly the tenants themselves. First floor, like you've got that great entryway to the lobby, like other people might come, but like, yeah, just thinking about it, like if I were working in this building, I would have a really hard time thinking, oh, I will cross McGrath and go to the grocery store or the coffee shop around the corner from the grocery store there. Maybe I'll hit Sophisticated while I'm there. Anyway, just wanted to say that was the biggest response that I had to that, other than definitely telling Tori about the native plantings. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. The next person I see with the hand raised is Irish Brown.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm not really speaking for or against this. I do understand my questions cannot be addressed. This isn't back and forth, but I do think that there are a few questions that I have that it might be useful for you to address in future meetings, just as you move forward. One of them actually does relate to the previous comment about crossing the highway. I wasn't entirely clear how much parking there is in this area, in your building. And I have worked as a scientist 1 block, 3 blocks, and 5 blocks from where you are putting this. And I can tell you from personal experience, if I like sprained my ankle or something and had to go around the lab, which I have had to do, I would be very angry if I did not have decent parking around there. And so it's just something I wanted to point out. More so than other buildings, this may actually be more important in this building, that there be adequate handicap parking. I also wanted to ask about snow in this area, because I understand you're using most of the footprint. If we get a lot of snow, I'm not entirely sure where you would be piling it up in this space. Also, again, having worked in Kendall in a load of buildings that had very nice terraces and balconies, no company I have ever worked for has allowed you to actually go out onto it. Not that they're not pretty. I just thought that, you might want to consider whether that's the best use of that space, given that very few companies actually allow employees to use it, even though it looks very pretty. I also was curious what kind of tenant you were looking for this, because the needs of a biology lab where, well, I'm a biologist and most of my job is moving slightly salty water from one area to another, is very, very different from hardcore med chem. And if you're using mountains of organic solvents and you've got mercury and all sorts of things, very, very different situation. I'm sure you're working with compliance on that, but part of the reason I was interested is you're right next to the trains. And I was curious how you were planning on dealing with any vibrations, because I a little bit worry you might have trouble getting tenants if that's a frequent problem for you. And I'd hate for this to be, not fully used because it's such a beautiful building. Anyway, so thank you for hearing. I did have one other thing, but that was addressed less to the builders and more to the board itself. I noticed in the, what do they call it? Something like the Central Somerville Ave planning space that they're trying to put in. They had a set of slides, and a big portion of that was this absolutely should not be R&D space because we have mountains and mountains of labs that are sitting completely open and no one will use them. I don't really know whether that's fully true or not. I don't know if that's going to change. I haven't looked at the market. I'm sure these guys have, but it seems that given that you're hearing 2 or 3 different applications for more lab buildings in the near future, that's something that you know, the city government should probably come together on in agreement of whether we do or do not want more lab space. Because you're saying in the same week, two different things. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to speak in support of the application? Please raise your hand. Going once, going twice. I'll close that portion of the public hearing, open it up to anyone that would like to speak in opposition to the application or otherwise express concern thereto. Going once, going twice. Seeing none, I'll close that portion of the public hearing, open it up to discussion by the planning board, comments, questions of the applicant or of staff. I'm just going to go real quickly just because Eilish Brown just raised it, and it's exactly what I was thinking of. Is we have permitted so many lab buildings in Somerville that have either not been built, that are looking to change the use. One thing about the two that we permitted across the street from each other in Davis Square, which I thought was silly then. You know, it turns out, yeah, we were right. And there are lots of articles in various business journals and news organizations saying that the region is overbuilt with labs. They're not being built. They're not being tenanted. And so I'm wondering how you came to the decision that this is now the right time to build even, you know, more lab space. Again, beautiful building, you know, great idea. I'm just wondering if the use is something that's going to be thoughtful based on what we've seen over the last couple of years, and kind of an overabundance of lab space that is either not being built after it's been permitted, or lying vacant.
So I will quickly just say one thing, in that we, you know, the goal of this team is to get through this process and build this building. They do feel there's a market. I'll let Ken talk specifically to how this is different than some of the other spaces, and what he feels the market is for this type of lab. It is different than the larger floor plate buildings, but I'll let him do that.
Thanks, Tom. And thank you, Mr. Capuano. So, you know, the interesting thing about, you know, time is how it changes things. So when we first started permitting this building, we were told this building is too small, that you could never fit a lab in here. No lab will ever take floor plates that are this small. And what happened was everybody built these monster buildings around us, and you know, they're sitting vacant because what they're finding is that there's not a lot of labs out there that want 200,000 square feet, that want these large floor plates. And what you'll start to find is that there's more and more lab spaces starting to fit into these smaller spaces, 40,000 square feet. Originally, our plan was to have a single tenanted building for this whole building. But as we've gone through it, we're starting to see the demands really more in like a 40,000 square foot, which for us is about 3-4 floors. So at this point, we're really looking at this as being like a 2-tenant building, which, as you suggested, you know, there's a lot of these buildings going up, and what you're going to notice about them is that they're much bigger than ours. They were, you know, they were permitted for large footprints that don't subdivide very easily. So, you know, our goal really was, let's create a striking building. And Kristen, if you can go back to the view from on top of the Squires Bridge, you know, one of the things that I loved about this property was that it has such an iconic view from this angle here, because there's nothing that's going to be built in front of it. So when you're coming down McGrath Highway, you know, and obviously this is something we'll have to do in the future, but there is such an iconic sign that could be put right at the top of this building, with this really beautiful building where, you know, it reminded me of the Converse building when you're coming over the bridge in Boston. And to me, that was always my my vision on this. Now, 51 McGrath at one point was permitted to be high rise, but through a public process, that building was brought down. So now it can only get to be a mid-rise 6. So with that known, that's why we paid so much attention to this building facade here, because we really understood, one, this is a storage company. They may not ever go anywhere. And this is going to be a very focal piece. Now, there was a point where we had a lot more glass over here, but based on the regulations, we had to remove all that glass and put back, you know, some flatter sides, just because that was the requirement of the UDC. So, you know, this building and, you know, my team and myself, I'm a landscape architect by trade, so design matters to me. I've always been a person that believes in these, you know, kind of master plan developments. You know, when we first started this, we were, you know, working with 15 McGrath, trying to figure out something that we could do collectively. You know, it didn't work out because it's not as always as simple as my landscape architect mind wants it to be. But, you know, I've still always been just, you know, floored by this site. I just think that this is a great site. The floor plates lend themselves to smaller labs, which is what you're getting. And again, with the location, with the potential that could happen over at Twin City Plaza, with the proximity to Cambridge Crossing and now the new Brick Bottom neighborhood development, we're really at the center of this. And I can tell you, I can't tell you the name, but I went on the roof of our concrete box, as Tom called it, with a head of a major life science company. And he looked around and he said, oh, so there's Bristol Myers Squibb over there, and there's you know, there's Biogen over there. And he's like, this is really right in the middle of all of it. And so that is what's been giving me the confidence that this is a dynamite site for a lab, and you know, this building is going to sell it. I'm sure of it.
Okay. What? Yeah. Your confidence is contagious. No, I do appreciate that that thoughtful explanation of why you think this particular application is going to be successful where others may not have been. It's times like this where I miss our former colleague Erin Gino, because this is precisely what her line of work was. And she would have very detailed questions to ask of all of you about the development of specifically of lab space. My question is, I do hope you're successful. I do hope you have, you know, 1 or 2 great tenants that will be able to come in the event that this building is built and it goes, you know, unleased. I'm just curious what the plan would be if we have a vacant lab building like we have had. How difficult is it to convert this to a different use?
And
being kind of the smaller floor plate that you've described.
Right. And obviously, you know, your question is the same as my question, right? That's what my ownership asks to me. Ken, what can we do? If this building is built, what can we do? And if the truth is that if that happens, what we need to do is we need to come back to the city, because it's a non-conforming residential building. And that was kind of what I turned to my design team and said, hey, let's look through the regulations. Is there a way that, let's say this doesn't rent? I'm confident it will, but if it doesn't, how are we going to be ready to maneuver? And really that comes back to the city, because I couldn't put residential here without your approval, because it's not, you have very specific residential buildings and exactly what they can be. And, you know, I'm one of the people, like I said, I'm a landscape architect. I'm a creative person in mind. If we get to the point where we don't have these tenants, then I'm going to be coming back to you and I'm going to be asking you, you know, how do we make this work? Because the reality is it's a great site for residential. It's a better site for lab only because I don't have direct access to that floating platform behind me. So, you know, in order for me to actually get to the T, I have to come out onto McGrath Highway. Squires Bridge is always going to be Squires Bridge. So I'm either going to have to go left and walk all the way down, or connect to the community path out behind the new hotel. So, again, it's not, it could definitely be a really good residential site. And if that comes to it, I'm going to be coming back to the city and saying, how can we work together to deliver, to modify this building? And, I'm working with my design team all the time, trying to come up with ways like, okay, make sure that the structure is in place, that if you needed to subdivide, that we can do that. And luckily we'll have all the power that we'll need. We won't have an issue with that.
Good. No, I appreciate that response. And your thoughtfulness in, potentially creative other ways of using it in the event that this might not work the way we think. And the only reason I ask that is I don't come in and say, what if your project fails? Because that's never my intention. But the reality is we've seen lab space not necessarily pan out the way the developers have wanted in certain circumstances. So
right.
I appreciate that. And I apologize for taking up so much of my colleagues' time. And so does anybody have any else they'd like to ask? I see Michael's hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for asking that line of questions. I had the exact same thoughts. It's hard not to be thinking those thoughts right now. And I thought the answers were great as well. So thank you for those answers, entertaining it. I am going to do my best to channel our former colleague a little bit here with the lab questions. I had one in particular that jumped to mind. So I appreciate that the parking is below ground and that you're not going to have your hazmat below ground as we saw in one or two applications in the past. But I do recognize that this is potentially a zone that could be subject to flooding in the long term. So I wanted to first understand your view on how you might be able to mitigate some of that flooding risk, just generally speaking, and B, more importantly, how you're able to mitigate any risk of that flooding getting into the hazardous waste storage in any way. Obviously, we don't want those chemicals to potentially get out. So just your thoughts on that would be helpful.
And Kristen, do you mind clicking over to the first floor plan? And pardon me for hijacking this from my design team. But so what you're seeing here is that, the building is all sitting at finished floor level, but what you see in the back here is actually a raised loading dock. So this line, and if you can show the line of the loading dock, yeah. So that's a raised loading dock. So basically and it's all tilted back towards the loading dock, right? So any water that's going to start to flood up is going to get collected below that loading dock line, which is raised in order to accept that. So the chemical and hazmat storage, that is all at the raised level. So when we're talking about this, you're talking about the chemicals being stored up above finished floor level. Now, given the world and how the you can't control, we're doing what we can to control as much of that as we can, right? Raising it up even beyond the first floor level, not putting it underground because you don't want those things. And I believe our first floor is relatively high. So, the goal will be to try to get it up as high as is reasonable. And do we have a finished floor level anywhere on the landscape plan? Just trying to see what it would be above flood elevation.
No, but our dock is 4 feet above our level 1.
Right. So we're 4 feet over and above, I mean, not that in today's world, who knows? But given we have some properties down in Florida, and when the Hurricane Helene blew through, there was about 3 feet of water that went all the way over Clearwater. So the hope is it wouldn't extend over 4 feet, but if we get there, we're all in big trouble.
Anything else? I see Jahan's end.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the applicants for the excellent presentation. I do think that this building is going to be an attractive addition to the Somerville McGrath Highway area. I do have a couple of questions. One is around traffic patterns, and as we all know, McGrath Highway is a well-traveled artery, and with construction and other developments occurring in the area, how does the applicant team propose the construction planning during the interim period?
Ian, are you still on? You haven't put you to sleep yet?
No.
So Ian and HSH have been phenomenal. They have worked with each of the development teams between 35 McGrath, 15 McGrath, and 1 McGrath. And we happen to fall not only on a city district line where Somerville meets Cambridge, but we also fall on a Mass DOT district line, which, if you can believe it, is even more difficult than a city district line. I'm sure Ian can attest to that. So we have had meetings, including members from Somerville and from Cambridge, including Brad Rawson, to address exactly your concerns. And so I will let Ian talk about the complexities and how we're connecting all these pieces together, because it's been a pretty amazing process.
Thanks, Ken. Thank you, everyone, chair members tonight. My name is Ian McKinnon from Howard Stein Hudson. As Ken mentioned, we've had a really extensive, I'll call it a task force between these different stakeholders. We've even involved some of the advocacy groups to really make sure that all of the planning for the bike connectivity, the community path, all comes to fruition. So there's been a task force meeting group that's met since 2021, since I've been involved in this project. We've had probably a dozen meetings over the past 3 years working through issues here, working with mobility, Mass DOT, folks from Cambridge and Somerville to plan out what would be a change in this area. McGrath Highway is, historically had this really daunting feel to it, as we heard from others, very hard to cross. And really what we're trying to do is break down the scale of what this roadway is and create opportunities for smaller blocks, easier to cross, improved bike facilities. I think we've all seen how McGrath and O'Brien Highway has changed down near 3rd Street. And so the intent is to extend that all the way up here. I think you also mentioned construction as well. We have been working with both of our abutters on construction contingencies. Obviously, this is a tight site to build in, but we have agreements to work with both of them to ensure that we can build this site safely without much disruption to the public itself. So there'll be a full construction management plan. We're happy to share that at some point.
Great. I think that's very helpful. I do have another question, and this actually relates to this slide that's been projected. And I see the chemical storage. I also see, I would imagine that there's deliveries. There would be deliveries of hazardous materials. If you could share how those deliveries would occur, meaning I'm assuming they're coming in trucks or other large scale vehicles, and how would they enter, whether it's this chemical storage area or any other areas that you're proposing to house hazardous materials?
So I'll take this one again. So what you're seeing here is and if Kristen, is there a slide that maybe comes out a little bit more that you can see the curb cut? Maybe the landscape slide's the best one. And I'll just reference that back here. Yeah. So what you're seeing here is that you're seeing our main access come off here, off McGrath Highway. And what you're seeing is this driveway that comes back in here. And then those trucks are able to access our loading dock. And then the chemical storage is directly off of that. So there is no interaction. There's no shared, parking alongside And that was part of the reason that we were asking for this zoning relief, to have the parking accessed from the front and the loading from the back, to keep a clear separation so that anybody that's dealing, and now, Kristen, if you can go back to that first slide or that other slide, so that, you know, there's really, nobody's going to be kind of back a house here. You know, only people that are supposed to be back there are going to be there. Everybody else will reach their elevators before they get to this area. So it's going to be a very clear, secure area that we're able to create with this design.
Great. Thank you so much for providing that clarification. Those are all the questions that I had at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair, as well.
Great. Thanks, John. Do I see anybody else that wants to make comments, questions, or discussion at this point in the evening? None of my colleagues do that. I do want to leave the written record open for a couple of weeks, so we can take this up again on the 21st, just to make sure the public has a fulsome opportunity to weigh in. I'm going to leave the written comment open until 7 o'clock on the 14th. Written comment can be submitted to planning@somervillema.gov. And with no further discussion by the members of the planning board on this agenda item, I'm going to continue this to the 21st, seconded by Jahan. Steve, can you please call the roll?
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Amelia Aba.
Used.
Oh, right, that's right. Sorry.
And I'm actually
Michael,
texting her now to come back in.
and Michael Capuano.
Aye. Thank you all. See you in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I just texted Amelia to let her know that she can rejoin us. We have a couple of other items on our agenda too. We have a bunch of other other business. It's 8:15. I don't know about you guys. I'm getting to the point where I'm gonna want some food in a bit. So I don't think we're gonna go through everything. There are definitely three that we should get through, which are the I consider them to be the three non-controversial zoning amendments. I hope my assessment on those three is accurate. But I do want to go through those three because we do need to make a recommendation to the land use committee soon, and we're going to have a nice fulsome discussion on the other two in 2 weeks. We have that, maybe the CPC thing, maybe the rules of policy and procedure. I don't think we're going to get standard conditions tonight, but let's see what we can bend through. Next up on the, I'm just going to take them by the list that I've got here. 282 McGrath Highway, requesting in addition to the small business overlay district, planning board. I don't think we got any written testimony on this one. There was a decent amount of oral testimony that was provided at the joint hearing. Does anybody have any comments that they'd like to discuss, questions on this one? Yeah, Amelia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wonder if staff could just confirm for us, this may have been covered, I apologize, but this was advertised as requesting a map change to an overlay. And I just want to make sure that in terms of the way that it was advertised vis-a-vis the map change that would actually need to go into effect, that we're all clear, because I think that was a point of confusion during the hearing.
Sure. I think how it was advertised as a change to the zoning district from neighborhood residence to small business overlay. It's really not changing it from neighborhood residence. The base zoning is going to remain neighborhood residence. It would be having the small business overlay be over this parcel.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's a good clarification.
Thank you. I
Yeah,
have no objections to this item. I just wanted to make sure that we had advertised it and we're clear.
No, I remember you asked this at the joint hearing too. It's like, what are we talking about here? Like, was this properly requested by the applicant? Or was it an oops? So, yeah, I mean, it seems pretty straightforward to me. This is one of those properties that in the comprehensive zoning overhaul, we might have accidentally missed this one. It was a restaurant before COVID, then had to close during COVID. We did the rezoning, and now oops, they can't put the restaurant back. So it makes a lot of sense to me. I would move that we recommend adoption of this proposed zoning amendment. So moved, seconded by Amelia. Steve, can you please call the roll?
Sure. Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Lynn Richards.
I'm supposed to abstain, correct? So I'm going to abstain.
Sure. Amelia Aba
Aye.
and Michael Capuano.
We have a unanimous recommendation with one abstention. Next one up is daycares. Who hates kids? This one actually seemed, again, pretty straightforward and reasonably non-controversial. I don't think we got any testimony on this one either through the written comment period. Does anybody have any comments, questions, suggestions on a recommendation for this? Seeing none, I will move to recommend adoption of this proposed zoning change. Seconded by Amelia. Steve, please call the roll.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Amelia Aba,
Aye.
and Michael Capuano.
Aye. Next up is a series of corrections and errata for the zoning ordinance that was pretty thoroughly reviewed. I think it was by Dan, made the presentation at the joint hearing. Does anybody have any comments, questions, concerns about this particular application for an amendment? Yes, Cindy.
I had clarification questions on two items, and neither of them would stop me from adopting staff's recommendation, but just to understand clearly, one is the clarification in here that wall murals are commercial signage. And I was just, this trips me up a little bit because I think sometimes when we're looking to businesses to provide murals on the sides of their buildings, we're looking to that as like a public art piece. And I wonder if, is this section 10.8.19 intended to regulate murals that are on commercial buildings that are not commercial in nature? Or this is an open-ended question, but Steve or Emily, if you have any additional insight here, I'd appreciate it.
I'm not sure that the it specifies what type of building this it just says directly painted onto the exterior wall of a building. Emily, I'm not sure if you have any insight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I did not participate in writing this amendment, so I'm not 100% certain. My instinct is to say that this would regulate signage that is painted as a mural. It would not regulate art installations that are not related to advertising. But we can follow up on that and confirm for you.
Thank you. I wouldn't want to hold up voting on this overall package on that item, but I would appreciate it just to understand the nuance because we do talk about murals as sort of a community benefit in terms of an artwork that's sometimes provided. Thank you. And then my other question was just, I'm not sure I was tracking fully. There is the addition of language in here about the process for the removal of conditions that on items that the planning board has previously approved and conditioned. And this is top of mind because we've been having these discussions recently about how we might address modifications to past conditions, either when something has been inactive for a very long time, or in the cases of, for instance, the marijuana retailers. And that is in section. Let's see if I can find it now, sorry.
You're referring to 15.2.2.
Yes, you do it. So just,
F, yeah.
yes. Could you highlight for us, Steve, if you have an explanation, sort of what process is being laid out? Because I tried to follow this through in the language and I just was not completely clear.
I honestly, I like Emily, I wasn't across this when it was being drafted. I'd be glad to, I'm sure Dan Bartman would be able to, the director of PPZ would be able to give an explanation, but I don't have one at the moment.
Mr. Chair, through you, I can answer that. My understanding of this revision is it clarifies that such changes don't go through the full plan revision process. They are not considered something that would be evaluated as de minimis or a major amendment. They are an actual change to a decision and therefore simply need to go straight to the board for a return to review. So it clarifies the application process. It makes sure applicants are aware they don't need to go through that initial administrative step, but can go directly to the board to request an amendment to the decision and conditions.
Okay, so that's saying the applicant would still need to go through steps 5 forward, application submittal, staff report, public note. Okay, got it. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I just wanted to make sure I understood clearly. Appreciate it. Thank you, Emily.
Anybody else? Okay. None, the chair moves to recommend adoption of this proposed series of amendments, seconded by Amelia. Can you please have a roll call vote?
Michael McNeely?
Aye.
Luke Schuster?
Aye.
Jahan Habib?
Aye.
Lynn Richards?
Abstain.
Oh, right. Amelia Ava?
Aye.
And Michael Papuano.
Aye. Okay, we have some other matters of other business. Review of standard conditions we're not going to get to tonight. Amendments to the rules of policy and procedure and CPC. Let's do policy and procedure first. That's a little bit more pressing. So I don't know, Steve or Emily want to explain what the proposal is and why it's being suggested to us
Sure.
now as opposed to at the beginning of the year.
Sure. This is Steve Carey, PPZ. We typically do amend the rules of policy and procedure at January, at the end of the year, beginning of the new year. This one directly affects a couple of projects that are going on right now and would obviously, continue to affect projects like this. Essentially, our zoning ordinance still casts a pretty wide net in terms of development activities that are subject to site plan approval. One of those that ISD determined is subject to site plan approval is a change in the number of commercial units. So that would be if a building essentially or a business essentially wanted to knock down an interior wall to combine with the unit next door to expand their business area. While that doesn't really affect anything on the exterior of the building, or really anything that would be sort of within the purview of a site plan review, that still is activity that, based on our definitions we have, would be subject to the site plan review process. So it seemed like it was appropriate for that sort of development activity, the change in commercial unit counts, to be a minor site plan approval, something that can be approved administratively. And rather than have them go through sort of the burdensome process of a neighborhood meeting and all the pre-submittal steps we have full site plan reviews go through. I know Emily Hutchings, I think, has been the main point of contact with those applicants that would be affected by the site plan review, the approval process, were to remain as it is. So I don't know, Emily, if you have anything you want to add.
Thank you, Steve. Through you, Mr. Chair. This came to our attention because we did recently have two businesses apply for site plan approval or for building permits to update the spaces. They are both small businesses hoping to make 2 units into 1 each respectively. And we this is a good example of how like one or two applicants might come to us and give us a heads up that, hey, this process is really cumbersome and it's this is the process I have to go through as a small business. And so this is not just for these businesses. This is something that we consider in alignment with our equity and economic development goals in supporting small businesses broadly.
Do you have any further comments or questions on this? They call this the Spice Girls, policy and procedure rule, to become one. Just dating myself, I guess. But anybody, anything else they'd like to add for the good of this discussion point? Yes, Michael.
I just wanted to confirm 2 things, which would make me a little hesitant and would want me to get more public engagement. One, is there any way at which there wouldn't be a review process if there were externally facing modifications? Like if, for example, the removal of that wall required them to reinforce and change things on the exterior, would that be kind of subject to still come to the board, or would you have purview in that case?
Mr. Chair, through you, there we go. Facade changes to storefronts are already minor site plan approval. So that's already something that the board has determined can be approved administratively.
Yeah, I guess my question is, if there were something that would already be coming to us, is this kind of removing that in some way? I'm mostly worried about an accidental situation where this is like a Trojan horse process where you can bypass something else. And actually that dovetails into my next question, which is going to be, if they remove this with the intention of trying to make it so they're ready to have a change of use that they wouldn't already be able to do, they would still have to come through us for that process, right?
Mr. Chair, through you, this does not change any use provisions. So if there is a use that requires a special permit that is not permitted, or if the use requires a special permit, they would still need to go through you. If it's not permitted, it's simply not permitted. There are not use variances in Somerville. There is also a special permit requirement for commercial uses that have over 10,000 square feet in floor area. I believe the board just reviewed an application for a gym use that was that required that special permit. So that would not change that process. It is these are for the examples we use are fairly small in scale. I think if the board is concerned that this type of application still warrants some additional review, some public process, another option would be to make this minor site plan approval, but still require a public hearing, but simply just not require certain different pre-application steps. That might be a good way to, I hate this idiom, but split the baby. So it would eliminate the need for potentially neighborhood meetings where feedback could be provided at a public hearing setting, and a design review that simply doesn't apply to internal design changes.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. If you don't mind me replying through you, I'm pro making this process as smooth as possible. So I don't mean to inject and ask. In fact, I wouldn't ask for that hearing at first glance. I just wanted to make sure we didn't run into a situation where, like I said, we were able to accidentally streamline a bigger process by way of, like, for lack of a better phrase, a Trojan horse maneuver. So thank you for those answers. I think that was enough for me. Thanks.
Yeah. Emily?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, through you, if there is concern about potentially giving away more than is intended, I think maybe we could provide some additional language that states combining 2 commercial units into one is allowed through minor site plan approval, and perhaps the combination of more than 2 units might still require additional review.
I also want to note, Emily, that, for other areas where we've given staff the discretion to make these types of determinations for, small matters. There have been instances where staff has determined, what, this should probably go before the planning board. This is not just going to be a ministerial sign off. And you guys have always been quite good at identifying potential issues and things that we on the board and the public should be aware of that might fall outside of just a kind of a nothing change that staff has the discretion to do outside of a more public process. So I imagine that will continue to remain the same. Anybody else? Okay. Seeing none, Chair moves to adopt this amendment to our rules of policy and procedure. Seconded by Amelia. Make a roll call vote, please.
Michael
Yes,
McNeely?
oh, hang on. I see Amelia.
I'm sorry, are we moving to adopt this with the clarifying language that Emily had proposed?
Yes, as suggested in the amendment.
So I apologize for the interruption, Mr. Chair, through you. The clarifying language about the 2 to 1 and no more.
I think that's what you're referring to, Amelia. Is that right?
Yes, I just wasn't clear on whether the motion was to adopt it as written or with that change.
As amended. Steve, sorry.
Oh, sure. So on the motion, Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Amelia Aba,
Aye.
and Michael Capuano.
Aye. Okay. Last item that we might bring up, it's 8:32. Honestly, staff, what are your thoughts on kicking CPC to another meeting when we can have the CPC liaison present? I mean, I can certainly speak on this, having been, the inaugural chair for 5 years. Jahan is currently the chair.
Sure.
We can do it, but is this
It's
something
really-
that needs to be done tonight?
No, it's not. I wanted to add it to the agenda just to plant the seed and have you guys kind of start thinking about it. I think you're all familiar with the CPC and what they do. And yeah, I'll see if Roberta Cameron, who's our great CPA manager, if she can be on hand for maybe the next meeting if you guys have questions about it.
Yeah, let's see where we're at next meeting, because we'll have the 2 cases that were continued. We'll have the other 2 zoning amendments. Any other 45 Mystic, I think, continued, but there's probably a good likelihood they'll continue again.
They continue to December 5th, I believe.
Yeah.
And then we also have
Union Square.
Yep. 71
I would
Square is
love to be
coming
able
back.
to take Union Square at a lesser busy meeting. So if we might be able to push them
Sure. I'll
sometime to
reach out
December
to
too,
them
just so we can get through the stuff that we already have.
Sure.
Okay. Anybody else like to raise anything for the good of the meeting? Lynn, welcome. Did you have a good time at your first meeting?
I had a great time.
It wasn't
I'm
super
sorry.
controversial. Just wait for a couple of weeks.
No, I just thoroughly enjoyed preparing for the meeting and listening to all of this. I'm such a planning nerd. I'm so sorry.
We're glad to have you. All right. And at some point we should consider having a planning board social hour again. So with no further items on the agenda that we're going to bring up tonight, At 8:34 p.m., the chair moves to adjourn, seconded by Amelia. Do a roll call vote, please.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
and Michael Capuano.
Aye. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
All right, everyone.